Welcome, and you're watching AIL TV, and this is Security Update. We have been off the screen for a couple of days, but of course we have been sourcing out information, especially for this program. You remember in the last two programs, we were talking about Ethiopia and Tigray, you know, the war and the conflict. Yes, and our presenter, David Otto, is back. Now, but actually, he's not back. He's actually in Nigeria as we speak. Now, tonight we have got a very, very, very interesting topic. The topic is about humanitarian issues, and I will just show you in a few moments. Now, before, I don't want to waste much time because we are already late anyway. So, and I must apologize, but I want to introduce to you to our guests. Right. Here, basing on my bearing, it could be on the left-hand side, it could be on the right-hand side, depending how you are looking at. At the far end, I have got David Otto. David Otto is our presenter, Security Update, and he's the director of CISO, Stepped In, Stepped Up. And then we have got Meaza Gidey. He's actually joined the program from Washington, D.C. Now, that's very interesting. Then we have got Dr. Merid Gebru. Sorry, am I pronouncing your name correct?
Correct.
Good. And then we have got Melat Habtu. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. Now, what really we are talking about here, this is what basically we are going to look at. Let me see if I have got this thing right. Now, when you look at the screen, depending what you are looking at, this is actually a live feed. We are not just sourcing out information from anywhere else. This is a live feed from UNHCR. This is today. If maybe I can bring it on full screen so that we can actually see what is going on. Yes. So as you can see, this is what is happening in Ethiopia. So all the discussion tonight is going to be based on what is going in Ethiopia in terms of humanitarian aid. So without actually wasting so much time, let me hand you over to David Otto. So, David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Thank you very much for the viewers of Africa Security Update. Again, as Mr. Joseph said, you know, this is a platform in which we developed and designed by Africans in London television to produce and to give the African audience security updates of what is going on in Africa. We really want to make sure that we can listen to the voices of Africans. Africans can talk about their very specific issues that are happening. And, you know, that leads us to the program of today, which is Ethiopia. And most of you must have, in one way or the other, heard about the issues that are ongoing in Ethiopia, in the Tigray region, between the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Forces. I mean, I think it's important that we bring to you the voices of people that live in this region. They can give you the insight, tell you what is happening. Now, there has been an ongoing war, as we all know, in Ethiopia. Now, the government describes this as some kind of law enforcement of, you know, punishing or stopping the infractions by the Tigray region from what the government terms as, you know, an attempt to set the country into chaos. Now, war is one of the things which never ends just by a simple, we are going to go in there and fight. It never ends like that, and that is the experience in Africa. So what we have today is to talk about the human aspect. I mean, it is very clear that in every war, it is the people that suffer. And, you've got to look at the human aspect of it, understand what is the impact of the crisis, who is involved, who is not involved, what are the internal issues, how is the humanitarian situation being managed, considering the fact that, at the beginning of the crisis, we had a complete blind spot. The government did not allow for any international or local media. They did not allow for any access to the Tigray region. So information has always been coming from, people that have contacts within the region. And this has been a major issue within the crisis. So having this guest, including Mela Haptu, who is a youth activist, also with Dr. Merid Gebru, who is a medical practitioner, and Meaza Gidey from Washington, who is a researcher and an activist, is very important to hear their voices, and they will give us an overview from their own angle, how they see the humanitarian crisis. So let me begin with you, Meaza Gidey. What is your take on the current situation? The government in the beginning said this was going to be a very quick war or a very quick intervention. Now we know that this is not true because the war is still ongoing, and it is now impacting on the humanitarian situations and conditions in the Tigray region, where you have other infractions from other countries. What is your angle on this today?
Thank you so much for having me today, first of all. And as we have been warning, the war has become a protracted war. Even early on, when the Abiy Ahmed regime in Addis Ababa declared that it was going to be a couple of days operation, we knew that it was going to last for quite some time. And that's mainly because the war is not only between the regional government of Tigray on the one side and the federal government of Ethiopia, the Amhara militias, and some other foreign forces. It's based on the regional government that enjoys majority support among the Tigrayan people. And so as Tigrayans, we feel like this war has been waged against our right self-determination and self-administration. And so it was bound that people would continue to fight for their constitutional right, no matter how hard it becomes. And so when you have a region that holds its right to self-determination so dearly that it had gone through similar wars in previous decades, you very well would know that the war is not going to end only within a couple of days. But nobody listened, and then called for cessation of hostilities, and peace talks were ignored by the federal government, and here we are today. Today, the war is continuing, and people are dying not only of the warplanes and the bullets, but also because of starvation and lack of medication and other basic needs. So over 4.5 million Tigrayans are under dire shortage of medication and humanitarian aid, and the situation on ground is quite gruesome. It's even hard to explain. We're getting first-hand witness accounts of people based across Tigray, and they're telling us that Tigrayans are dying left and right, and they're dying of disease that could be prevented had they had access to medicine. But because the federal government won't allow international aid workers to enter to Tigray and deliver much needed humanitarian aid, our people are trapped, but the war continues.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gidey. You've put it in a very smooth way for me to bring in Mela Haptu. Mela, you are a youth activist, and of course 75% of the African population, but that is also a reflection of the population of Ethiopia under the age of 25, and this war that is being fought in the Tigray northern region is impacting on the youth population more than the older population, because of course the youth are the majority. Now, what do you see from the humanitarian aspect? How has this impacted on the youth in the Tigray region from a humanitarian angle, of course? Over to you.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, like you mentioned, a high population of the African population in itself is youth dominated, the same way as Tigray is as well. We've got a very high population of the youth that make up the larger population. We have received accounts of the youth being specifically targeted by the government forces over fears that they will join the regional government of Tigray in the fight against the federal forces. Therefore, we have accounts that the youth in itself is being specifically targeted. We've had accounts of universities, such as Meaza University, being specifically targeted also. Therefore, this war is also specifically damaging the future of the youth of Tigray as well as the whole of Ethiopia. Me myself, as someone who had enjoyed luxury attending a British university and being able to almost kind of have an insight into Ethiopian politics from an outsider's point of view. When Mr. Abiy Ahmed came in, we were all very happy. We were very cheerful in the fact that we thought a lot of things that he stood for would directly impact the youth in a positive manner. But what we've seen so far has been very critical in damaging the youth's future, I believe. So in the perspective of someone who is a part of the youth movement, I feel as if the youth in Tigray are majorly suffering because of the war in Tigray at the moment.
Yeah, I think that, that's very concerning. And again, that moves me to Dr. Merid. War always entails people dying, but it's not just the people that are dying; it's the people that are injured, the people that are suffering from medical conditions. They have no access to medical care. They have no access to the basic necessities. And Dr. Merid, we're talking about a period when there is COVID-19 everywhere talked about in the world. And the Ethiopian government, of course, the prime minister had postponed the elections on the basis that there was COVID-19. But he failed to postpone the war on the same basis. Now, what is the impact of the the health situation from your viewpoint, and how is that a devastating or an aggravating situation that warrants an international intervention? Over to you, Doctor.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Joseph and Mr. Otto. And I really appreciate being invited to this panel. It's a very distressing time for me as a medical professional and also one that upholds the dignity of human lives. War cannot be glamorized. We know that in war, there are, all kinds of participants. There are the invited ones, the combatants, the people, that actually take an active part in the war. But there are also the uninvited and the unconsented sufferers that are often, forgotten. And these are mainly unarmed people as well. And you said it quite rightly. We are in an era of COVID-19. And I remember as some of the conflict was just starting, and there were some events happening in Addis Ababa, the number of people that died because of conflicts were more than the number of people that died because of COVID-19. And obviously, now after whatever you want to call it, the serious conflict or war, the number of people that have died, even though it's not verified, is presumed to be in thousands. What a wastage of human life. Life is very precious. And the attitude of live and let to live seems to be dying, not only in Ethiopia, but seems to be undermined in most of Africa. And that really aches my heart. Respect for life. As a doctor, I respect every organ of a human body. And as a transplant surgeon, I have great respect for every organ. But to see so many human lives being wasted, and people and the international society is turning a blind eye to it and waiting until the whole volcano erupts is really a saddening situation. Obviously, I have great interest in war and how it affects health, which I presume would come in another program. But today, in a more sort of general approach, I just want to highlight that, war is not a fighting among politicians in a boxing ring. I wish that was so. But oftentimes, it's actually a war out there where the people live. And these uninvited and unconsented people that are involved in this war are the ones that suffer the most. And they are often voiceless. So there's no one to voice their sufferings. The civilians, they die. Some are disabled. And that is not only physical, but also mental disability. And it's not only short term, but it's also long term. It's very devastating. And then you have the most vulnerable members of the community, which are often women and children. We're hearing about rape happening in the 21st century. How disciplined should an army be? I mean, in some of civilized societies, you have a psychological assessment of people that go into war, not only for them to be disciplined, because the stressful environment can make some soldiers very psychotic. And we've heard of atrocities happening even by soldiers going from Europe, Australia, and America, in Afghan and other areas of war. So war is not to be belittled. And even in the most disciplined societies, it's not easy to regulate. So it affects women and children, the girls, the young people. I feel sorry for Meaza and Melat, in their young age, for them to be exposed to a war situation, and many other young people. I have seen this situation in Ethiopia from 1960. And I have seen a lot of, bloodlettings, needless days of many young people that could have contributed immensely to their communities. With such a situation, it's hard to give a voice. I like to say that I'm not an activist, but I represent a majority of people who are silent. Why are they silent? Because the moment you voice, firstly, you are labeled, and then you are demonized, and then you are, likely to be destroyed or defamed. So that is the fear that is captivating the majority of people. I like to believe there is a majority of peace-loving Ethiopians. And I know for sure, there are a lot of peace-loving, Tigray people as well. So there is no way we can measure the damage that's happening on the ground, because as you have quite rightly said, this is a war in the dark. A war in the open space in daylight is, could be disastrous, but a war in the dark is a combination of hell and tsunami. After the others.
Yeah, I think you've made a very strong point there. War is, is an undesirable element in any country, but if it's fought in such a way that there is a very huge blind side to it. There is no access to any sort of credible media or any sort of a transparency within the areas of conflict. I think that poses a huge problem. The humanitarian situation, it's cannot be underestimated. I think something really needs to be done. And as Mela Habdu said, this is a war that impacts the youth. It's something that will leave a devastating kind of situation in the minds of the youth and women and children, as you all mentioned. Now, let me come to you, Meaza, because you talked about the issue of the Tigray region. This war is against their self-determination, but it is made very clear. I'm sure that I'm not mistaken. I think by the Constitution under Article 39 of the Ethiopian Constitution that each region has the right to self-determination and secession. And if I'm not mistaken, it clearly says that in order for that to happen, a referendum has to be held in which majority of the regional state has to vote for the secession or self-determination. Now, is that something which is being considered by the Tigray region? Because I understand from talking to other people in the Tigray region, they are not interested in seceding from the Ethiopian geographical space, and they are just interested in their own in the respect of the of their territorial regional integrity. Is that something which has crossed your mind? Because I just mentioned this because you talked about self-determination there. Over to you.
Obviously, I don't have the constitutional right to decide on what should the future look like for Tigray, because I'm not in Tigray right now, although I'm of Tigray origin. That right is fully, it depends on the choice that the Tigray people who have the constitutional right take. So whether Tigray is going to continue to be part of Ethiopia or whether it's going to entertain the rights that it is enshrined by the Constitution under Article 39 and declare its independence is something else. It's something that we need to see in the future. However, the right to self-determination and self-administration, it's not a right that can only be entertained or exercised if a country, if a region decides to be a country. Even while you are part of Ethiopia, you do have the right to be administered by people and representatives that you vote for. And so the war started mainly because the people of Tigray wanted to elect their local representatives. They wanted to elect politicians that are going to represent their interests in the overall country-wide policy making and other political interactions. However, the Abiy Ahmed administration, he wanted to postpone the election in the hopes of holding grip onto power, because although COVID-19 was used as an excuse, but it was an erosion of democracy. Because when he was nominated in late 2018, he was supposed to prepare the country for an upcoming election. He was not even elected. He was nominated so that he can prepare the country into a peaceful, all-inclusive and transparent election. And that date was supposed to happen in 2019. However, he used COVID-19 and then he unilaterally decided to postpone the election, to dismantle a political coalition that has been working. It wasn't perfect, but it was working. At least during the era of the PRDF, we haven't seen a genocidal war. There were, of course, some humanitarian violations and other things that governments have to deal with and take corrective action. However, he dismantled that organization, he dismantled that coming togetherness, and he unilaterally postponed the election. And the Tigray voice was not included there. And so the people of Tigray, rightfully so, they exercise their constitutional right and then hold their own election. Because of that, now war has been waged against them. And just to be clear, this war is not only between the TPLF and the federal government. It's not. The war is between the people of Tigray and invaders. That, at least as a Tigrayan, that's how I feel. As an international relations researcher, that's how I feel. Because it's not only TPLF officials that are being hanged. It's not only TPLF officials that are being starved to death. It's the people of Tigray. It's innocent children, mothers, fathers, and the youth who are being prosecuted, who are being shot in day broad light, who are forced to leave their houses and become a refugee in Sudan. Over 2 million Tigrayans have been internally displaced. These are not politicians. They might support PLF because that's their right. That's their constitutional right. However, they're not active members of the political party, but they're being hunted. Even us here, when we speak for the voiceless, when we're trying to sound the alarm to the international community, when we're telling them that our people are dying, that they're being exterminated in the dark, were labeled as TPLF. So this war is not only against TPLF, it's against our identity, it's against our land, it's against our history, it's against us as ethnic individuals. So this is why we take it very seriously. This is why we say it's a genocidal war, because there is a very serious ethnic cleansing happening, and all because we want it to be administered by people that we elected, people who speak our language, people who are from our region. So that's why we say it's against our self-determination and self-administration. But the future of Tigray is going to be decided by Tigrayans who are based in Tigray, because they have the right, and it's not up to us to say yes, Tigray is going to be part of Ethiopia or not.
Thank you for that analysis. Let me get to Mr. Joseph, and I think you want to chip in a question there. Go ahead, Mr. Joseph. Over.
Okay, I'm back. Yes. Obviously, I am an outsider. I am just, everything that I am reading about Ethiopia, I'm looking at it from a historical point of view. To me, it looks like what is going on in Ethiopia now, this situation has been in existence for thousands of years, I might guess. So, and it seems that there is no way these two sides actually can meet and can meet up even in the middle and say, well, look, you know what? Yes, we are fighting for our freedom, but an everyday person, as Dr. Merid has put it, the people, we in East Africa, we have got a saying which says that when the elephants fight, it's the grass which suffers. So you might actually find that the people who are suffering, like what I've been reading today, is 1,100,000 people have immigrated. They have left their land. They have left their home. Do you think there could be any solution to see that, okay, we know we are Tigrayans, and the rest of us, you are different people, but we are in Ethiopia. How can we put this suffering to an end? I can tell you, in East Africa, we have witnessed it. When I was growing up, I saw a lot of Rwandan people coming from Rwanda to live in Uganda. And you have to remember, 1 million people, almost 1 million people, they were killed within a space of 3 days. Now, and the international community, as you have put it, have been saying that we don't want anything like that to happen in Africa. And they don't want anything to happen like what happened in Europe. So you as young people, because you look, I always prefer myself as a dinosaur, as I've already said that. My age looks at things differently. So you guys, I'm really, really, really excited because you are here. Is there anything that you, the young people now, can rise up and say, well, look, you know what? Let us inject in a new thinking. Because what we are here on AIL TV, we want to talk solutions. And this is why we have got this platform. Believe me, you can be here every day if you want to. What do you think that is needed to do? Because me now, I'm relying on you young people. You have to remember, you are the people who are going to lead the country in the coming years. I wouldn't worry about Ahmed Abiy. I wouldn't worry about anyone else. Those guys, they have got their own thinking. And their own thinking is sinking our nations in Africa. I think I have said so enough. You know, people say, well, you always ask long questions. But here we are discussing. Now, you as young people, what do you think you can actually do? Because you've got a right. As I said, I am just working, David Otto and I, we are working on actually finding people. You see, we want to give you the platform, go and speak. We are hunting people from the UN and the African Union. We need them. These are the people we want you to speak with. But you have to have an organization. So, for example, you can have an organization for youth people because you guys, you are bright, you are a researcher and activist. When you get up to speak, people will listen to you. Look at this young woman from Sweden. I don't know, it's from Norway. Greta, is it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Greta Thunberg, yeah.
Exactly. We want to hear the voices like Greta, but our African voices. So I know maybe you might have forgotten even what I was saying. So, but I just want to hear you as young people. What do you think you can do?
Yeah, let's get to let Meaza start first. And
yes,
Meaza, do you want to take that? Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Just to quickly touch upon the numbers I think you mentioned. I think the situation has gotten much worse. We've got over 2 million, who are displaced within the Tigray region. We've got over nearly up to 60,000 who are currently in Sudan, who are refugees of this war. So we need to actually bring into perspective how dire the situation on the ground actually is. And in terms of the question you asked, how can we as young activists or young people influence change within that region, or call for action rather than influence, call for action from institutions such as the UN Security Council, the EU, and the UK Parliament. We have been running a lot of campaigns. We've been advocating tirelessly. Meaza has been a great part of that. There has been communities engaging together in order to achieve our goals. However, there has been some type of pushback, I believe, from my perspective, because I do live in the UK. We have been pushing for the bill amendment, the trade bill amendment that was taking votes in the Commons, which was presented by Lord Alton. That had been brought up to the Commons, and we had been really campaigning for that because it has a clause in there where UK government does not engage in any bilateral trade deals, with any state they believe is in violation of human rights and possibly genocide as well. Therefore, we had been advocating and campaigning for that amendment, to be passed. However, we that didn't get passed and it went back to the Lords. But these kind of changes that push the UK Parliament, which right now we, as a British citizen, I believe now that we have left the EU and we are our own entity, we need to make sure our values and our norms and values and our beliefs in diplomacy and in human rights are basically shed on the rest of the world. And we have to share those values in terms of not just trade deals, but in terms of our beliefs in human rights. And if that's the case, there's a lot of things, or there's a lot of approaches that I felt that the UK government could have taken and could have possibly pushed a lot more than it has been doing. We have been advocating by writing to our local MPs. And I have, me personally, myself, I had received a letter from James Durridge, the Minister of Africa. He had written within that letter that he's gravely concerned about what's going to, but this was in the beginning of December. And he had written also about the fears of regional instability and the fear of the conflict kind of coinciding and reaching Eritrea. What we knew, but what the rest of the world did not know at that time, was the extent of Eritrean involvement in this war. what I would really ask for is for the British government, now that they know what they know, is to retract the approach that they've been taking and have a serious stance in maintaining international human rights, which I feel like, although they have been the beacon of international human rights in a historical context, and they are part of the UNSC Council, I feel like in order to push these governments that they feel like are in violation of human rights, and there has been credible evidence presented to them on those terms, we need to see a lot more action. And people like myself and Meaza and all these activists are trying to push these actors in order to impose some type of sanctions or some type of withholding of aid, or some type of trade bill, like what I just mentioned, the trade bill amendment, those kind of steps, in order to force these actors that are violating international human rights to act accordingly. And I think that's within our values as a British citizen, but also internationally, that is what we should be upholding in terms of the UN Convention on Human Rights of Geneva. So that is the couple of things that we've been doing from our side to push these institutions and governments into action.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, before I get to Meaza Gidey to answer the same question, let me speak to Dr. Merid Gebru. Dr. Merid, do you think the youth have a bigger place to play here, considering the influences that they have? What is your view on this, Dr. Merid? I know this is outside of the medical and humanitarian situations, but I think there is a connection here, getting the youth population to push their voices and influence these countries. I mean, I understand that is very difficult to push countries like the UK to take decisions, because they're always very reluctant to do that. What do you see from your side, Dr. Merid? You can unmute yourself when you're ready. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I think Mr. Joseph put a very difficult question. When you are in hell, I think the most important question, I'm a doctor and I prioritize things. There are certain things that require an emergency attention. So when somebody is in hell, the first thing is the life that they have in hell has to stop. They must get out of the danger zone, out of the danger area. Our Prime Minister has said it in his inauguration of the Nobel Peace Prize. When he saw war from a battlefield, he thought it was a test or a summation of hell. Well, surely from whatever angle you look at it, hell is hell. So when people are going through hell, we cannot talk about a solution forward. No, as we are talking, people are dying. In war, and also now because of basic necessities, including famine, 4.5 million people are exposed to famine. And, even though we have great strengths to survive as human beings, eventually, after consuming ourselves, eating ourselves, people are going to die while they are sleeping. So we are talking about a looming disaster in making. I don't think it requires to be an activist to fight for such basic human right. I think it should be the voice of every decent human being. I mean, a while ago, a certain black member in America died, and the whole world took that and said, Black Lives Matter. And that was just only one person. So when 4.5 million people are in the danger of going through famine days that can be prevented in the 21st century, to allow such, a mass, extinction of people cannot be allowed by any standard. So where is the human standards? And all these international organizations and, so-called modern societies, they have to live up to, what they say. And obviously, if Ethiopia cannot help itself, and if AAU cannot help itself, surely the international bodies should jump in. I mean, we all know about the situation in Libya when Benghazi was in that dreadful situation. The international, community did intervene to save civilian lives. So, you cannot have two-tier system. People are people and their words is the same wherever they are. I think life is precious and we all need to uphold life. So I agree with you. There ought to be a long-term solution, and that's not easy. Every relationship in life has a history. Marriage has a history. If they can stay together as a family, all the better. But if you have an abusing situation in a family and you let it continue, the most likely outcome would be either both of them would die and the children would go to fostering, or one of them would die and one would go to indefinite stay in jail. So we're talking about, a family, an Ethiopian community. Oftentimes, this is a mosaic of people and culture, and people have been intermarrying. Obviously, the most ideal existence, with mutual benefit would be to stay together. But even in England, we have the option of devolving. Scotland has been given the referendum. So there is the option of even divorce in marriage. So, if all options are exhausted, for the sake of all people in Ethiopia, I think all options should be put on the table. But, now is not the time to talk about the long-term solution, but now we should get people out of hell and save lives.
That's a very, fantastic way of looking for a solution. Give people an avenue to save their lives. Now, let me get to you, Meaza Gidey. I mean, I know you want to jump into Mr. Joseph's question about the role that the youth play. But I'd also like you to touch on what you see as the immediate solution. I mean, my experience is that humanitarian situations, rescue missions are important to relieving the disaster that the people are facing, but it never stops wars. In most cases, humanitarian interventions, they postpone wars because there is this idea that, we've got the United Nations there or the UNICEF, they are giving people food, therefore the war should continue. Now, what do you see as the way forward? I know we'll be running out of time very soon, but let's touch on some of these key areas. Over to you, Meaza.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to touch up on the first question on what a role the youth could play. And now I want to speak not only to the younger generation from Tigray, but also the younger generation across the world. As the younger generation born into the 21st century, I hope we all abhor violence and injustice, no matter what it happens, no matter who the perpetrators are. If that's the case, then we should speak up for the voiceless, no matter where they are. And the first move in that would be to learn about what's happening in Tigray, to find out how you can best help. You might see a tweet or a picture on Twitter, on social media, with a piece of information about the atrocities and the war crimes and alleged crimes against humanity that are being committed. So please don't jump it. Don't click. Don't write rest in peace, whatever, and just pass. No, try to stay engaged. Reach out to communities, to organizations, use organizations who are trying the best they can with the very limited information and access they have. So that's the first thing. And in addition to that, stop supporting or stop financing the genocide, either directly or indirectly. We know there are so many Ethiopian institutions that are involved in this war, starting with the Ethiopian Airlines. So if you're an African or an international member of the international community who used to, fly with Ethiopian Airlines, do consider that decision and know that Ethiopian Airlines is actively supporting the genocidal war that has been waged against the people of Tigray. So stop flying Ethiopian Airlines, stop supporting any kind of government really that, engaged in genocidal war. de-associate yourself, stop funding the genocide. That's the first thing you can do. And the next thing is, this is the thing I tell my Tigrayan sisters and brothers. I know we're going through pain. I know the pain and the suffering that our people are enduring is unimaginable, but we all should do our very best not to hate. It's very difficult, but let's try not to be hateful, because everything is being done onto our people because there has been propaganda for years and years that dehumanizes us as ethnic group. So we don't want to go through the same cycle. This is the pain and the suffering that our people are going through collectively. It's resulting in a genocidal trauma, like a generational trauma, but we don't want to be on the other side of history in the coming years or so. So we have to do our very best not to be hateful. I know it's very difficult because it's my sisters and brothers that are being slaughtered like chickens, and it's hard not to hate those who are doing it. But we have to do our very best because our family taught us to be better than that. So that's the one thing the younger generation could do. But generally, to come to your question, to the second question, what are the immediate actions that can be taken to stop this? The international community, ever since November 4th, has been expressing their concern. But unfortunately, expressing concern is not enough. We want them to take the next step and to actually do something about it. And the first thing, of course, has to be making sure that humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance is provided to all people within Tigray, not only just those in Mekelle, in the capital city of the region, but to all Tigrayans. And in addition to that, in addition to humanitarian aid, we have to work hard, particularly the UN Security Council's member. They need to take action to effect the immediate withdrawal of foreign forces from Tigray. Because as Melat said earlier, Ethiopian Eritrean forces are highly engaged. Most of the alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity, they're being committed by Eritrean troops. And so the UN Security Council needs to take an action. It could be in the form of economic sanction, arms embargo, or travel ban that forces the Eritrean government to take back its troops. This is the first thing. And there are so many things, there are unknown things. And the ultimate solution is it's a peaceful and an all-inclusive dialogue, and the international organizations, the intergovernmental organizations, need to do everything in their power to bring all warring parties to the table in the hopes of solving the political problem through dialogue and discussion and not through bullets. So these are some of the things that can be done, but I cannot emphasize enough on how time is of the essence. People are dying and we want them to take action immediately.
Time is of the essence, as you rightly said. Mr. Jisawa, I'll get to you. Let me just get Mela Habdu to Mela. This is a dark cloud over Ethiopia and generally over the Tigrayan population, both at home and abroad. What do you see any silver lining? Do you see anything that says to you, we're getting there, or are you still frustrated by the lack of any way forward, in a way that will end this crisis or this war? What do you see, Mila?
Well, the only silver lining I've seen so far is just the unity of the diaspora coming together to fight against subjection of our people and to fight against a war of survival. So that's the only silver lining I've seen so far. In terms of what we can do as the diaspora, we are the voice of the voiceless. We know that there's no telecommunication, there's no types of news coming out of Tigray. We are the only voice they have. Therefore, it is within our duty to be able to voice the atrocities, the war crimes, the suffering that these people have endured. It is also the duty of anyone that believes in humanity and justice, and anyone that believes in the right of the survival of the human race, and anyone that believes in calling people who are against, people who have committed human rights violations, calling them for what they are doing and actively have been doing for the last 3 months. Therefore, it is not within the Ethiopian community or within the African community, but within the international community. just like the doctor has said, we need to have the same energy as we have had for the other human rights violations that's happened within the USA, within the BLM movement. We've had a lot, we've been a part of that. We've been advocating actively for, for the Black Lives Matter movement and all other movements across the globe. Therefore, we need the young activists and we need the young people to be aware of what's going on in Tigray and to be able to voice these atrocities. And in order for us to actually influence change, we need to be able to go to those institutions and to those in charge who are able to influence these changes, such as Meaza had mentioned, the UN Security Council. And in order for us to influence them, we need to understand the relations between our governments, such as the British government with Ethiopia and the USA with Ethiopia, in order to know what we are asking for, in order to have a concise agenda of what we want them to do or what we want them to implement, so the government is influenced into action. So that's one thing I call for. Understand what you are asking for. We are asking for the humanitarian corridors to be opened. We are asking for aid and agencies to be able to deliver much needed aid to the region of Tigray. 4.5 million people are at risk of starvation. And this is, of a greater urgency, like Meaza and Dr. Merid had said. It is a matter of urgency. Therefore, people need to take it as such, including the young activists all across the globe.
Thank you for that. You've talked about this. Let me get to Dr. Merid for 1 minute. Dr. Merid, my advice always to these kind of situations is that unity is very important, but also coordination, especially when you're dealing with the international community. How coordinated is the youth and the adult population? I'm not saying that the youth are not adults, but I'm talking about the young generation and the older generation. But also, from your perspective, do you see, people talking the same language, using the same tactics to the same organizations? That would be key in pushing the international community to intervene. Is that what you see, Dr.?
Well, I think it's a very tricky and complex situation. To me, my understanding of human rights is not when you fight for your own human rights. It is actually when you are comfortable, but you are actually fighting for the human right of other people. Because by doing so, tomorrow, somebody is going to fight for your human rights. But the moment as a human being, you neglect to fight for the need of others, then when your time comes, you'd find yourself isolated. And I've heard what you said earlier on, being, said in lots of places, like, if people are in a conflict, starving them is not a solution. That actually is a very cruel solution. But some politicians have resorted to that, and I've heard it from 1960, in Ethiopia. As a professional and as a religious person, it really hurts me. Because, firstly, we have to understand war never brings a solution. War only regenerates more war in the future. Looking at it from 1960, things have gone from bad to worse. So I think it's very important that we have a priority in human rights. And in this situation, I think the looming famine should absolutely be stopped and human rights must be respected. I think that is not negotiable. Any decent human being do not have to be an activist. You do not have to be an Ethiopian. I think that should be the basic necessity of a human dignity, decency. So if people are allowed to live, then obviously the next question is the expulsion of foreign participants in the country. That shouldn't happen. It cannot be legitimized. And it has become very obvious, though it was denied before. And everybody agrees now this is more than, a simple rule of law. This is a nasty war. And the war needs to be stopped, not to allow the needless death of many more people and upsetting the system of human existence. And I think finally, we're all humans. There is only one way we can live together, and that's by dialogue. We all have to be willing for the sake of every one of us to be able to negotiate. And we also have to remember, this is not an isolated problem of Ethiopia. You know, the Horn of Africa are like terraced houses. If there is a big fire in a terrace environment, sooner or later, whatever shocks the first house, you know, the tremor would be felt by all. And we're already seeing the effect of that. And I think as a humanity, we all are bonded together. I think it's very important that we feel each other's pain. And that is what I don't see in the international circle. I think Africans should see this as their pain, and the whole world should see this as their own pain. I mean, Clinton shed tears after Rwanda massacre and genocide, but those tears did not make any difference. There was a time when Clinton should have acted, but shedding tears afterwards would not help. So as the saying goes, a stitch in time saves time. I'm a doctor, I see things from a priority need. I think there is an emergency need that should attract the attention of everyone, and not only just to do a talk. It's a time to act fast, because people are dying. And this should be a painful experience, not only for Ethiopians. I mean, you know, I feel sorry for the young people, but the pain is felt by everyone. And we live in a media time. So the pain comes all the way to your home. And there are a lot of intermarried people within the cultures. How would the children feel in that kind of environment? And how could one rejoice and celebrate while the other one is dying? And we all have to think of a post-conflict existence as well. The more messy the current situation, the more bridges are broken between communities, the harder and the most difficult it would be to maintain marriage and a family as we know it now.
Thank you, Dr. Merid Gebru, medical doctor. You made it very clear. A stitch in time will save 10. We thank you very much for your views. Mela Habtu, youth activist, thank you very much. I think you've made it very clear that the youth population must rise, not just in Ethiopia, not just in the Tigray region, but across the world. You're calling on the youth to put their voices in a constructive manner and request for intervention and make it very clear what they want the international community to do. Meaza, you've made it very clear as well that this is a war that shouldn't happen in the first place, and you're calling on the international community, you're calling on all the youth, be it in the Tigray region or in the region of Ethiopia or in Africa, to rise up and put their voices to end this war. We hope that your contributions, sincere as it is, will be listened to. We thank you for your enormous experience in this matter. And we call upon the world to, beam its light towards Ethiopia, which is one of the most prosperous nations in Africa, the largest, second in terms of population after Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your contributions. We would have you again to give more light onto what is going on. We hope the humanitarian situation will be better if intervention is carried out. Thank you. I would hand you over to Mr. Joseph, and thank you to our viewers. Over to you, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am really excited. I can see many people have really engaged on the. Let me show you. I'm sure you will be able to see the. This is actually This is all people actually sending in their comments and stuff. Some of the comments, I can't read them because they're either in Amharic or Tigray. So, but it's good. Now, one thing really I want to say is this. You see what is happening here? I don't mince my words. I have reached an age whereby I say things as they are. We as African people have got a massive problem. You see, when something happens in France, you will see Africans wearing French flags saying we are crying with France. Now, we have got actually a situation in Africa, not only in Ethiopia, we've got situation in Cameroon, Ivory Coast, I don't know where. Now, especially when you have got 1,100,000 people fleeing their country, fleeing their land, going to live into a foreign land, but you don't see Africans saying we are crying with Ethiopia. What's wrong with us? You know, and yet we will actually brag about, oh, the internet, blah, blah, we have got all this. We might as well live without one, because we have got all the information we need. But yet still we can't actually see. And that problem is because we are so much segregated. People talk about diaspora, they sing this, and I don't believe it anymore. But I believe in people who, intelligent people who are able to come on the platform and speak and articulate their thoughts. I just want to ask these questions. Why are we not crying with Ethiopia? See, really we really need to, we need to go deep into that. When a situation happens in South Africa, because South Africans are chasing other Africans, you know, and then it becomes people start making noise. This is the noise now we should be making. And also the issue of international aid. We can actually, if we got ourselves together, if we were together, we can raise money for Ethiopia. We can raise money in millions, even in billions. But it really disturbs me so much to see that we have got a very huge situation going on in Ethiopia, yet many Africans are not aware of this. But anyway, okay, now I'm just going to talk to the general public. Thank you very much, Melat, Habtu, and Meaza, Gidey. It's very, you came in at the last minute, you know, and you are here. Now we're going to engage more with you. But I'm going to suggest one thing. You guys, you need to create a movement for the youth worldwide, but which will include all Ethiopians, and not only Ethiopians. There are so many youth suffering in many parts of Africa. So if you could think about this, create a movement. We have got the platform here. You can talk to whoever you want to talk to. Now, over to the viewers. Thank you very much for watching. We have created a GoFundMe page. If you go to, or I can send you a link, because what we are trying to do with this funding from you viewers, we want to increase the level of how we produce our programs. We want to increase the level of reporting. We should have our own reporters on the ground, because all the time, okay, we are getting information from the BBC, we are getting information from Al Jazeera, that's good. But the GoFundMe page that I have created is exactly for this purpose. We want to liaise with the young people, young journalists in Africa. If there is anything happening like now in Tigray or any part of Africa, we want those young people, they can use their mobile phones. Now these days, that's what it is. So all the information we get, it is like almost like secondhand. So that is one. And by the way, as this one, I have to blow my own trumpet. I have just, as many of you guys, you don't know, but I am a musician. That is my background. Right now, as we speak, I have actually written a song actually which is about Africa, and we want to raise money for people who are suffering anywhere. It is going to be on Apple iTunes very soon. And I want also to collaborate with Ethiopian musicians so that when we say to the world, they can sing in their own language so that people can see what we are on about. Hey man, that is, I'm ranting. You know, when I rant, I can go on forever. So let me thank you again, Melat Abdu, Mayors Gidey, and Dr. Merid Gebru, and of course our presenter, David Otto. It has been a fantastic. It's really, really, really good. I can see we have got about 400 people watching right now. So that seems there is an interest there. We were supposed to talk about humanitarian issues. Okay, we digressed a little bit, but I'm sure next week we are going to have Dr. Merid Gebru. He is going to be talking about the impact of the war in Ethiopia and Tigray, the health-wise, because we have also to look at how people live. Some people, they are affected by the situation, but also some people are affected because of stress. Even as we speak here in the diaspora, you have got people who are really stressed. I have seen people who have even stopped working because they cannot really stand and the pain and see what is going on in Tigray. Well, look, as I said, I am an outsider. I am looking at it from a historical point of view. David Otto said that Ethiopia is one of the countries that is respected in Africa. You guys were never colonized. You don't know all these colonial things or situations. But we find it very difficult that why can't you get on? You're all Ethiopians. I know, I might say it, but hey, people might disagree. Hey, thank you very much, and we will see you next week if you are available. How about that?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.